There comes a point in any professional's career when something happens that completely defies logic, something that makes you question everything you know about technology, about systems, about the very reality of the work you do every day. And for me, that moment arrived on an absolutely ordinary Tuesday. One of those that starts with lukewarm coffee and the expectation of another predictable day at the office where files behave like files. Computers do exactly what you tell them to, and the only surprise might be an unexpected email or a meeting that pops up out of nowhere, but definitely not what was about to happen. I've worked as a management consultant for almost 15 years, and during that time, I've accumulated hundreds, perhaps thousands of client files, endless spreadsheets, brimming with financial data, meticulously crafted presentations, dense reports that consume weeks of careful analysis, contracts that undergo endless legal reviews, and each of these documents represents not only hours of intense work, but tangible pieces of the trust clients place in you, concrete fragments of real business numbers that translate dreams, ambitions, fears, and all. The human complexity behind the corporations we talk so much about, but rarely stop to truly feel. My filing system has always been impeccable, almost obsessive. Folders organized by client subfolders, by project standardized nomenclatures that follow a crystal clear logic, automatic backups configured in 3 different locations because I learned early on that data is sacred and losing information is not just inconvenient, it's catastrophic. It can destroy reputations built over decades in a matter of minutes. So when I opened my laptop that morning and went to check the most important client file I had at the Momenta tech company in the midst of aggressive expansion that had hired me to structure its entire financial operation before an investment round that could completely change their game, I was absolutely calm, confident, even a little bored with the routine because I knew exactly where every comma of that document was. I had worked on it late the night before, compulsively saving every little change as I always do. The folder was there in its usual place, with the correct name, the familiar structure, but when I clicked to open the main, filed the master document that consolidated months of intense work, in-depth analysis, complex projections. Carefully calibrated strategies, what appeared on the screen was not the 87-page report. I knew by heart not the colorful tables, the elaborate graphs, the meticulous footnotes, but a message that instantly made my stomach churn. A simple line of text saying that the file was corrupted and could not be opened. That generic message that everyone has seen at some point, but that no one expects to see when they need a document the most. I took a deep breath, closed the file, opened it again, tried the most basic solution there is because sometimes technology just needs a second chance. But the same message appeared, relentless, indifferent to my growing anxiety. And at S, when I started following the emergency protocol that every professional should have, but that many ignore until disaster strikes, I went straight to the first backup, the one that's in a mirrored folder on the same computer, thinking that maybe the original file had some specific problem, but the copy would be intact. I opened the backup folder, located the file that should be identical to the original, clicked with that mixture of hope and apprehension that only those who have been through this understand, and to my growing surprise, the file opened perfectly. All the pages were there, each table in its place, each word where it should be. And for a moment, I felt that immense relief, that silent gratitude for backups that so often save professional lives. But that relief lasted exactly 17 seconds because that's how long it took me to realize that something was profoundly wrong. The pages were there, yes, but the content was changing before my eyes. Not dramatically or obviously, but subtly, numbers that I was absolutely sure were one way appeared slightly different paragraphs that I had written and rewritten multiple. Times had altered sentences. Not completely different, but just a little misplaced, as if someone had come by and made minimal but significant adjustments. And at first I thought I was going crazy, that the pressure of the project was making me see things that didn't exist. And they weren't random pages that had disappeared. They were entire sections of the report, crucial parts of the analysis, fundamental data that constituted the heart of the work. And the most disturbing thing is that the document didn't seem broken or malformed. It continued to flow naturally, as if those sections had never existed, as if the file was reorganizing itself to make sense without them. My heart started racing for real now. That visceral feeling that something is terribly wrong, but you still can't quite name what it is. I rushed to the second backup, The one on the external drive I religiously connect every afternoon, the one that should be the definitive proof that my files are safe. And when I found the client's folder, when I located the file that should be the perfect, untouched copy of my work, what I saw made all the blood drain from my face. The file was only 32 kilobytes, a ridiculously small size for a document that should have millions of characters, embedded graphics, complex tables. And when I tried to open it, the same corruption message appeared, but this time accompanied by something I had never seen before. A warning saying that the file might contain malicious code and asking if I really wanted to proceed, which obviously made no sense because it was a document I had created myself that I had personally worked on for months. I hadn't downloaded anything from the internet, hadn't opened any suspicious attachments, hadn't done absolutely anything that could introduce any kind of threat.
I spent hours staring at that screen afterward, not trying to fix anything, but trying to decide if I was still in control of the situation, or if I had already crossed an invisible line I didn't even know existed, because the feeling was no longer one of technical failure, but of response, as if each of my attempts to recover the file provoked a proportional, careful, almost intelligent reaction. It was in this state of silent alert that I noticed something new, a detail too small to be a coincidence, but too big to be ignored. In the system logs, there were internal accesses that didn't come from any known application, quick, deep calls, always occurring a few seconds after any action of mine related to the file. They weren't errors, they weren't alerts, they were movements. It was tracking what I was doing. I then decided to completely isolate the environment, disconnect from the internet, turn off automatic synchronizations, and work only with what still existed locally. I opened a simple text editor and began to write everything down, every time, every strange behavior, every minimal change. It was almost a primitive instinct, as if recording it in words was the only way to keep it anchored in reality. As I wrote, I noticed that certain words began to disappear from the text itself, not entire sentences, not paragraphs, just specific terms, always related to control, access, origin. I deleted everything immediately and closed the editor, feeling a chill run down my arms. It was at this point that I understood it wasn't just a file being deleted, but something that learned from the context in which it existed, something that didn't want to be copied, described, or fully understood. The more I tried to define the problem, the more diffuse it became. The more I searched for a logical explanation, the more logic seemed to be gently pushed out of the way. The idea of rebuilding the work from scratch began to seem irrelevant, almost naive, because even if I succeeded, what guarantee would there be that the new file wouldn't suffer the same fate? The following morning, exhausted, I decided to do the one thing I hadn't yet done: open the original file one last time, not to save it, not to copy it, but to observe it. The document opened faster than before, too lightweight, with fewer pages than I remembered. I read everything with extreme attention, and then realized something that made my whole body freeze.